Hey, friend. Welcome to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. Guess what I'm doing today? I'm going to share something I don't normally talk about, and I'm not going to talk about anything really legal. I just really want to have a candid conversation with you all about why we all need to stop being scared to pivot in our lives, and most importantly, pivot in our businesses. It is all about what your heart and passions are telling you to do and where they're leading you. And this is something that's near and dear to myself because I have pivoted quite a bit in my life. In the past 30 years, I've done a lot, right? We all went to school. We all did certain things. Specifically in this past decade, I've done quite a bit in terms of entrepreneurship. And so I thought it would be best to just be like a big sister Paige over here. And if you're a small business owner, this will be a fun episode where you can hear from someone who was kind of on a traditional like academic path and how they took this big left turn into the business world and being an entrepreneur and taking that leap of faith. And I just wanted to let you guys all know what I did and why I did it and give you some tips if you're thinking of pivoting from a W-2 type of lifestyle to an entrepreneur type lifestyle. This episode is going to be great for you. So let's get to this episode, my friends. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. As a reminder, before we get into this episode, I am legally obligated to give my disclaimer. So I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. All legal information I talk about on this episode is intended for the masses and a large variety of different businesses. I am only your attorney when you hire me and we sign an engagement letter for me to work specifically on your legal issues. Please feel free to seek out another attorney in your hometown if you need specific legal advice or contact me for more information. Alrighty, here's the episode, friends. All right, like I said, I'm coming at you as a big sister Paige right now, little birdie on your shoulder for everyone tuning in about why we really need to stop being so scared to pivot and start to embrace pivoting. As you probably know, and if you don't know, I'm going to tell you all about it, how I pivoted from a photographer, which I loved and still love doing, and now I really only shoot for close friends and family and loved ones. But I pivoted from a six-figure photographer to a purely online business owner, and I run the Legal Paige, and now I'm a virtual lawyer as well with my law firm, Griffith Law PLLC. So that pivot was really hard for me. But the first pivot I wanted to talk about was the pivot from traditional law life to the Legal Paige. And this all really goes back to my basically right at the end of law school. So when I started law school, I started my photography business. I have no idea why I did this. Apparently, I thought it was a really good idea to throw my hand in the ring of entrepreneurship and build a photography business from the ground up while I was starting my 1L year of law school. I mean, no one in their right mind does this, but I did. That's just kind of how I roll. If you know anything about my personality, Marco, oftentimes my husband calls me a type AA individual. I'm not just an A, I'm a AA, and I'm a perfectionist. I am obsessed with getting good grades. I'm obsessed with anything academia. I'm also obsessed with just winning and doing well and like competing and being the best and achievement and working really hard. And so that makes me an Enneagram 3 as well. I mean, I have a lot of really good qualities, I promise. But this is really the core of who I am. I don't know. It's just the way that I was born. My parents never pushed me into this. I promise. My parents were wonderful humans. I was raised so well. They never even said anything bad about my grades. This is all self-induced here. My parents would have been fine if I got C's and just passed high school. I mean, they would have loved me no matter what. So I have no idea where this comes from. My brother and I are both very, very, very similar. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, but Connor and I are about 7, 9 years younger than our other oldest sibling. And so Connor and I grew up together and we're both very similar. Like he's in the military and is like such a go-getter and also a type A individual. So it's just really funny how we turned out. I have no idea. We were both also competing growing up with everything, whether that's sports or whether that's getting the best grades or being a part of like the most, extracurricular organizations and activities. But regardless, when I got into law school, this was after double majoring, getting a full ride scholarship to college. And then when I got to law school, I just didn't think it was good enough to just be a law student. Apparently, I wanted to really work on and hone in on that side of my brain that was creative. And I had always had a passion for photography. So, of course, I couldn't just do the passion. You guys are all probably listening to me like, Paige, I don't know about you. But if you feel me at all, give me a nod on social media or leave me a review for this episode, because all of us out there who we can't just have a hobby or a passion. We absolutely have to be making money from it. And that's how I am. I'm like, well, I could do photography and do it for fun in law school. And like, that would have been a lot less stressful and a lot less work. But I had to literally blow it up to a 6-figure plus business in law school and work my little fanny off to like try to become the best photographer in my region and all this stuff. So always reaching for the stars here. That's my little tidbit on why I grew up and like how I was in my personality. But I love trying hard. I love hustle. Is that bad to say? I really love it. I've learned now, a decade later, that, hustling is there for a reason and a time period and a purpose. And it's not a way to live your life every single day. So I've really worked on that, of course, with therapy and with friends and with family and just with time and inner work as well of it's okay to just be at peace with where you are and live in the present. But that was not so much where I was at in about 2012, 2013. I was gung-ho about getting the best business I could out there as quickly as possible. So I started my photography business my 1L year of law school. By 2L year, it was already a 6-figure business. And by 3L year, I basically had an associate on and was shooting probably 30 to 50 weddings a year while still in law school, which is basically a full-time business if you don't understand law school. It's a shit ton of work. And so, but the funny thing is I was still working my little patootie off in law school and cared about my grades and cared about being top of my class, cared about being a part of every single extracurricular organization and activity I could to build that law school resume, because law school resumes are really all they care about for getting a job later on. They don't really care anymore about what you did in college and high school. So you have to do the same and basically look like you're still a stellar human and be very into certain aspects of the law, and what you really put your heart and soul into with like extracurriculars really goes to show like what you are more than just in a classroom. And so I did that. I signed up for, of course, like Women's Law Caucus because I'm all about women empowerment. I did a lot of moot court. I did Montana Law Review because I enjoy writing and editing. I did trial team, a lot of like personal public speaking things. I was all about becoming a trial lawyer. So I was on what I like to call this train I couldn't get off of in law school. Your law professors shove it down your throat that like the only successful people in the legal world are people who become partners at firms and make a crap ton of money. And I don't know why. I'm like, why do we have to work at law firms? Maybe it was because I was an entrepreneur in law school and I was running this photography business. And I was like, that's gross profit. It's not net profit what I took home, which was 6+ figures, but I was still making a really good living while being a law student. And I was making more money than what some starting lawyers make in Montana. Like the starting wage in Montana for attorneys can be like $45,000 to $60,000. I'm sure your eyes are like huge right now. And that's what mine were. I was like, this isn't fair. Like we got, if you tell me like it's all about working in a law firm and making a ton of money, like that wasn't reality in Montana. I'm from Montana. I didn't want to move. I also am all about just the business way of life and being your own boss. And I really just thought like, man, these associates at firms don't seem very happy. They're working god awful hours. They're working all the effing time. And it just really didn't seem like what I wanted to do. Meanwhile, I was also interning at a bunch of prestigious law firms in my hometown, the top-notch law firms that I could, while running a photography business and in law school, mind you. But that didn't stop me from figuring out what I wanted to do next and trying to stay on this train that everyone told me to be on. So my 2L year, I had still done pretty well academically. I was in the very top 5 of my class. I submitted applications to be a federal law clerk. And there was particularly one judge in my hometown that I really wanted to work for. I did my due diligence. I did my research. He just seemed like a very good fit for me. Politically speaking, we were kind of on the same page. And a lot of his values and morals as a lawyer, I just knew I would fit really well in his chambers. So when I applied, I luckily got through the interview process. And then at the end of my 2L year, so there's 3 years of law school, 1L, 2L, and 3L. And at the end of your 2L year is when you apply for federal clerkship positions because they plan out who is going to work for them. And it's a temp job. So this is in like federal district court and also circuit courts. Usually you can't go to the U.S. Supreme Court unless you're from like an Ivy League, Harvard, Columbia, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, those type of places. And usually you have to work for the circuit court level judge before you get asked to the U.S. Supreme Court. I was like not reaching that far because I didn't really want to do that. I didn't just want to sit and read and write the law all day long. They don't have courtrooms. They're just reviewing what lower courts did and deciding if it's right or not, according to the law. And then, of course, constitutional issues go up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I knew I wanted to work for a federal district court judge. I wanted to see civil cases being tried and being, judged by an arbiter of the law. I also wanted to see criminal law happen on a big federal scale. And I was lucky enough to get offered this federal clerkship position with the judge of my dreams. And it was the best 2 years that probably I will look back on 50 years from now and be like I'm getting kind of emotional right now because those 2 years were the best years of my life, not just because I was working for someone that I was so proud to call my mentor and someone that taught me more than I ever could have imagined in terms of life and in terms of being a good person and in terms of being a good lawyer, being a way better writer than I ever was. I've never had papers torn, draft orders, and memos and briefs torn apart the way that he tore them apart. He had, 50 plus years than I did in legal writing. And I came out of there such a better lawyer, but most importantly, such a better person. And the reason that I bring up this Judge Christensen, he is just one of my favorite people ever. The reason that he will forever be someone that means basically the most to me in my life is because he was the one that said, pivot, Paige, pivot. A 70-year-old judge who spent his whole life in private practice at a law firm and building his resume and then becoming a judge. And then, of course, he's a federal judge, so that's a lifetime appointment. Like, he cares about that, basically that train you can't get off of in law school. He's so, I would say, of the times, and he just really understood the world was changing in the legal aspect of everything. He understood that, this is prior to 2020, you guys, he knew in my mind, virtual law was going to be a big thing. And I had many conversations with him in his chambers about, I'm a photographer. He let me run my photography business while I worked for him because it didn't conflict with what I was doing, which was awesome. He knew I did that on the weekends. So I basically was working 2 full-time jobs for 2 years after law school. But he just could see me becoming more and more non-interested in the traditional law life of going to a law firm, which is basically what almost every one of his law clerks previously had done. If you work for a federal judge, you basically have job offers handed to you on a silver platter. I don't really know how else to say that. It sounds kind of presumptuous, but it's just true. Like, that is why the law professors tell you, get good grades, do all these things, build your resume, go work for a federal judge, and then you can have any job you want and you get paid more because you have more experience. And they really like you as a law clerk being able to kind of see behind the curtain before you start working for a law firm and becoming an associate and drafting briefs for litigation, so on and so forth. So it's a very, very valuable skill to have when you clerk for a judge, whether that's state court or federal court. But federal court's just a tidbit more prestigious than state court. I'm not quite sure why, because state court judges, they have their work cut out for them. They're God's gift to earth. They work their fannies off. The amount of caseload that they have is insane. Their docket is always packed. Federal courts are a little more bougie, if I do say so myself. Man, I'm giving you guys lots of insight in this episode. I am off my outline right now. But this judge sat me down 6 months-ish before I was going to leave his chambers. And that's when like his law clerks are really starting to think about what's next. It's always a temp position. There are what's called lifetime clerks, but that doesn't happen very often unless you just want to clerk forever. You're not really like going anywhere with your career trajectory. But most clerkships, state and federal court-wise, are temporary. So it's like a stepping stone after law school for you to continually build upon your legal skills that you learned and writing skills, and of course, speaking skills that you learned in law school, and then take those actually out into the lawyer world when you actually become an attorney and work for clients and various organizations and issues and so on and so forth. So this judge I'll never forget it. He comes to my office and he sits down and he has this ABA journal out and he has this article and it has these 5 or so people who had a non-traditional law path. And it was an article about what they did with their law career that was different than the rest. And 3 of them, I think in particular, I remember were like online attorneys and virtual attorneys. And they had really cool, like there was a legal blog one. There was like a legal kind of influencer who did like law clothing on her social media. And I was just fascinated that he would even care. But he put 2 and 2 together as I was already doing this in my mind during my clerkship and working, and continually building Paige Marie photography during that time. But he was the one who I just needed that older mentor in my life to say, I want to give you the permission to pivot and do this. And that changed everything. It changed everything. Immediately decided to pull all my applications for these law firms that I had wanted to potentially work for. I left the land of W-2 world and benefits and retirement plans. And I was like, I am all in with building a legal platform online, but I have no idea how to do it. And I don't really even know what I'm doing. So that's how it all started. And then I did a mastermind in 2018. It was Jenna Kutcher's mastermind. She's only done one. I don't think she's ever going to do any more. Jenna, if you're listening to this episode, you should do more because the amount of value that I got from your mastermind, in particular with my business was tenfold, morefold, I don't know, 1,000-fold. And I met some of my closest friends in the industry from this mastermind. Jenna gave us such valuable information, but masterminds, you guys have to know, it's not just about the leader and like what they're teaching. It's about the people in the mastermind and how much effort you put into working with the other attendees or mentees in the mastermind, because that is where the true value was in our mastermind. I mean, Jenna was phenomenal. I'm not saying anything bad about her. I'm just saying that only gives you so much, right? Like they teach you what to do, but it's how you go and implement it. And when you have other like-minded, headstrong female business owners around you, and particularly I chose a mastermind that was all female business owners, I found my core people that thought like me and worked in business like me, and they were my cheerleaders, and we were cheerleaders for each other, and we helped each other's businesses grow exponentially because of one another. Of course, because what we learned in this mastermind from Jenna and all of the wonderful, phenomenal like people who came in and taught us as well during the mastermind. But the true value is in the friendships you make at a mastermind and how you continually foster those relationships thereafter. So I have been super, super close friends with my good friend, Juliana Renard, and then also Jenny Maroney since that mastermind. I've still stayed in touch with quite a few other girls as well, but they're my core ladies in business. They're my biz besties. They're my biz wives, work wives, whatever you want to call them. I love them. And in this mastermind is where I came up with the idea to start the legal page. It was the very first month of the mastermind. And we were sitting down at a table at lunch during a retreat. And I don't even know how it happened. I really don't. I sometimes have a bad memory about stuff that happened in the past. But I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. And I'm not really sure like how this is going to go. And I was just finishing my last year of the clerkship with the judge. So I was like mulling through my ideas. And I came up with the name The Legal Page, or somebody did. I don't remember who did. But I was like, oh shit, that's a really good name. I should trademark that. And so I went home and trademarked it, got the URL and domain name. And then I was just like, well, I got to kind of wait until I know what's next. And so I started writing blogs and kind of just like building the platform on the back end. I was still a clerk. I couldn't take any money, couldn't take any cha-chings from anybody, legal or otherwise, because of conflicts of interest with being a federal judicial clerk. So it gave me a lot of time to just really think about what I wanted my business to look like. And I did a lot of research. I went to a lot of conferences. I kind of saw what else was out there in the industry. There was tons of people doing what I was doing. I mean, not like hundreds of thousands, like a photographer, but there was a good handful of people that were very successful virtual lawyers online. But there wasn't a lot. And I was able to kind of find my niche and find my USP, unique selling proposition, of what I wanted to do with the legal page and how I wanted to be different and stand out. And that's what I was able to spend the bulk of my time doing for the next year thereafter. So I built up the legal page, and by summer of 2018, I fully left my clerkship. My term with him was over. The best mentor I've ever worked with. Thank you to DLC. Thank you. And I took a leap of faith and I pivoted hard, and I was like, I'm going to see if I can keep this afloat with photography, and I'm going to run my photography business super well for the time being. The legal page was just in its infancy. It was just starting out. It wasn't making a lot of money. So I, of course, had to make money somehow. And my photography business was flourishing by this point. So I was like, okay, like I have a pretty good workflow and system in place. I'm just going to continue with my photography. I've got lots of clients lined up for the next year or two. And then I'll continually build the legal page slowly. And then in 2019, I just put in a ton of work towards basically the notoriety of the legal page. I tried to speak at as many conferences as I could, in person and virtual. I tried to sponsor as many events as I could. I tried to do free legal consults all the time for people in the small business industry, primarily the wedding industry. I tried to do lots of free legal classes online and webinars and build my email list. I mean, I was a workhorse. I was hustling to the ultimate hustle extent to figure out, like, will the legal page actually do what I want it to do and be what I have always dreamt of as an online legal education platform. And by the end of 2019, I had shot probably 300 plus clients in my lifetime of being a photographer, 100 plus weddings too. And I was a little burnt out, to say the least. I knew that I couldn't do photography forever. I knew that I either needed to pivot in photography and do more like brand photography or simple like lifestyle sessions. I really started loving like at-home lifestyle sessions. They were a lot easier. I wanted to get away from the wedding world. I had given up basically 6-7 years of my life at that point, all of my weekends in the summertime in Montana, which is the best time in Montana. I'd given up all of my free time was going towards photography. I was staying up super late editing. I didn't spend enough time with the people that I loved most. And I was just ready for a change. But I have a hard time going back to how I was as a child and how I was in high school, in college, and in law school. I can't say no. I have a really hard time saying no. And I have a really hard time saying no to money. And I have a really hard time saying no to what I guess would qualify as success, which is kind of silly. And I don't think there is an ultimate success now. I think it's just what you're passionate about. And I was passionate about being a good photographer and passionate about giving my clients a phenomenal service. And I didn't want to give that up. I didn't want anyone else to do that for my client. It was selfish and stupid because there are so many other great photographers out there. I know that now. But at that time, you're like, oh, this is my business, baby. I've worked so hard on it. I've made Paige Murray Photography grow to what I wanted it to be. And ultimately, at that point in time, I was like, I know I need to phase out. And so as I was going into 2020, I knew I needed to phase out of photography, but I had a bunch of clients that were booked. And I was very much set on finishing out my obligations with them in the summer of 2020 and 2021. And then COVID hit in March, and you guys all know that story. So then the world changed. I was rescheduling a bunch of clients. I had some clients that were still staying on that summer. There was some reasons medically that I wasn't comfortable shooting those weddings. So I just did the whole, like, I'm an open book, you guys. I did the whole, I'm canceling. Here's a full refund. Here's a bunch of really good recs I have in the area, because I wanted them to have the wedding photography experience they deserved. And I couldn't give it at that time. Because the legal page was blowing up because of COVID. There's a silver lining to the COVID situation for TLP, but my heart was elsewhere. It was funny because I was like kind of closing the door of photography very slowly at the end of 2019, 2020. And then I feel like COVID stepped in for all of us and taught us a lesson in many different ways, right? As small business owners. But for me, I feel like there was fate stepping in and saying, this is where your heart and passions lie, and this is where your path is leading you. And so in March, April, May, and June of 2020, I've never been busier in my entire life, but I was able to finally marry my two passions of photography, the wedding industry, and the law all together and help way more people than I was helping with my photography business. And not to say, like, those clients are incredibly valued, of course, and I love them so much. My photography clients, I look back on some of these photos that I've shot and I remember every minute of their wedding or every minute of their family session. But the spring 2020 taught me a lot of lessons, and it was literally telling me the legal page is your path and this is where you need to go. And then I had a lot of one-on-one clients that were reaching out to me. And luckily we had started Griffith Law at the end of 2019 as a virtual law firm for one-on-one clients to actually book with us and do it all legally online and make sure that it was an entire like legal client experience aside. It's completely separate from the legal page. It's totally different. So I'm serving the masses on my legal page education platform, and then I'm serving one-on-one clients at Griffith Law. And then Griffith Law started blowing up during this time as well. And I was juggling these two businesses that were exponentially growing. We could not bring team members on quick enough. And I was the only attorney basically working for these two businesses. And I didn't have enough time in my day. And ultimately I knew something had to go. And I went to law school. I want to be a lawyer. That is what I am literally put on this planet to do, is to help people through the law and help small business owners. And I found that out during this period of time. And so by summer 2020, I had to take a good hard look at pivoting away from photography once and for all. I did have a bunch of clients that I had rescheduled from 2020 to 2021. Well, they rescheduled because of COVID purposes. And I fully intended to shoot their weddings in 2021. But I just reached out to all of them and really showed them my heart on, this is a big pivot for me. I'm focusing all of my attention on these two businesses. I want to be really upfront with you. And I was just a human with them. And I said, I don't think I can serve you the way that I intentionally said I could serve you when we booked back in 2018 and 2019. My life has changed drastically, and I only want what's for your best interest. And I want you to be incredibly happy. Yes, I could have taken beautiful photos. Yes, I could have delivered a pretty gallery, but could I have done it at 150%, which I had given all of my other previous clients? Probably not. And so I was forward thinking enough to be like, it is a disservice to them to not give them the best experience possible. And they deserve that. And there's so many other photographers. And of course, as the legal page in Griffith Law was growing, I met tons of more people in the industry. I just saw so many amazing photographers out there that's where their heart and soul lied. And that's what they wanted to do. And they could give 150% to their clients. And I knew that I needed to transition that to somebody else. So my clients were all wonderful. They all totally understood. I, of course, gave them a full refund. I gave them tons of recommendations. I helped set them up so that it would be kind of a seamless process for them to switch from photographer to photographer. And they did. So that's great. And that's my pivot out of photography. I guess that was kind of anticlimactic, but it was climactic for me because it pulled my heart in 80 million different directions. Last summer, I had no idea. It was like closing this chapter of my life that made me who I was. If I wouldn't have started my photography business, I would have probably gone down a totally different life path with the law and probably being at a law firm and being a trial attorney, which I thought I was going to do originally. It would have never opened my eyes to virtual law. I never would have started TLP. I never would have found out who Jenna Kutcher was. I never would have met all of these really good friends who helped hold my hand along the way and cheer me on and be my confidants and supporters of building another online business. And yeah, my biggest pivot last year in 2020 was completely closing my photography business. So I wound up my business pretty slowly. I didn't do it in like a month or two. I contacted all my clients. I made sure that I was contacting clients that I had worked with for the previous year, making sure they had all their images and downloads from my online gallery. I sent emails out to people that I had worked with, of course, within a certain period of time. And by the end, so December 31st, 2020, that was the closing date of Paige Marie Photography. And I closed everything. I closed my website. I closed my bank account. I just wanted it to kind of be solidified. That also gave my heart some time to heal a little bit because I was so sad to close it. But I think it was the right decision, and I'm able to give my all into the legal page and Griffith Law now, and that feels really good. It was a weight off my shoulder when I did it, and I was just this huge sigh of relief came upon me. I could tell that my friends and family saw a big difference in me where I wasn't running 3 businesses. I was only running 2. And Griffith Law is not my full-time job because I just can't. TLP is definitely my full-time job. And then I, side hustle or moonlight with Griffith Law for my one-on-one clients. I only take a select number of clients every month through that. I have clients that are on retainer that I do work for consistently throughout the year. So that, helps me keep my hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, for continually helping with clients with litigation, with client issues, for drafting contracts that are at play, working in the trademark world and copyright world. So I do intellectual property law and contract law through Griffith Law, but every single day I'm basically managing my team of 8 that I have under TLP. We have 2 full-time employees, and I will never, ever, 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 ever regret that pivot in life. So that is my biggest advice to you. It's scary. I understand, and it may take time. Don't do things drastically. I just don't recommend that. Be kind with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Do what feels good at your own pace, but it's okay to pivot. It's great to pivot. I want you to embrace it. Understand that life has all kinds of twists and turns, and you can take a right turn, and you can take a left turn, and you can take a full 180 if you want. Life is not about the straight and narrow. It's all about what you can do to better yourself and better the life that you have. and be a better person and have more to give to others around you. I'm able to donate to more places now and have better charitable contributions. I'm able to have more time with my family and friends. I'm able to have more personal time for myself. I'm able to really, truly feel like my heart and soul and my passions and skill sets are all in the right place now. Just stop being scared to pivot, because there's so much beauty in the pivot, and there's so much to be learned in the pivot, and there's so much amazingness to come after the pivot. So I really, really hope that you at least took something away from my crazy just bleh of words in today's episode that will help you pivot to whatever you want in life, whether that's in business, whether that's in your personal life, whether that's in your relationships, whether that's in, I don't know, even just something that you're doing online. If you're trying to pivot your social media strategy, it's okay to do it. Give it time, give yourself grace. Let yourself do it the way that you see fit. Don't pivot the way everybody else says is the right way to pivot. Do it your way, my friend. Pivoting is great. Pivoting is good. I give you all of the permission to pivot, just like my judge did as well. If I can be that for you, that is the best thing that could come out of this. So thanks so much for tuning in. I will be back next week on another episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See you then, my friends. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.